My name is Jordan, and I've spent more than half my life at sea. The merchant marine isn't just a job, it's a calling. When I married Christy 15 years ago, I thought I'd found the perfect woman for this kind of life. She was patient, understanding, and when our children were born, Emma and Jake, it seemed like we had the perfect family. But the sea teaches patience not only to sailors. The first years were wonderful. I'd go on voyages for 3 to 4 months, come home for a month or two, and Christy and I would spend that time like a honeymoon. The kids grew up, and every return of mine was a celebration. Emma would always meet me at the door with drawings of ships, and little Jake would try to help me unpack my suitcase. Christy worked at the local elementary school as a teacher. The perfect profession for a mother of 2 children. She always said she loved her job, and I never doubted it. Why would I? She had everything: a stable salary, summer vacations with the kids, and enough time to handle household matters. But what I really didn't know was that a new physical education teacher had started working at the school. In 2019, something began to change. Not that Christy became cold or distant, quite the opposite. When I returned from voyages, she was especially affectionate, almost too attentive. She'd cook my favorite dishes that she used to make only on birthdays, buy new lingerie, plan romantic evenings. At first I thought, what a wonderful wife I have. She missed me more than usual. Naive fool. The children also behaved strangely. Emma, who was 13 then, sometimes looked at me with some kind of pity in her eyes. And Jake, a 10-year-old boy, once asked, "Dad, why do you always travel? Maybe you could find a job here?" He had never complained about my departures before. But the strangest thing was that Christy began insisting on moving. She said she wanted to live closer to the port so I could come home more often. "Think about it, Jordan, if we lived in Norfolk, you could come home even on weekends between voyages," she convinced me. It seemed logical. Really logical. So logical that I didn't suspect any deception. We sold our house in the small town of Wilmington, North Carolina, where we'd lived for 12 years, and moved to Norfolk, Virginia. The new house was smaller but perfectly located, only an hour's drive to the port. Christy quickly found a job at a local school. The children adapted to the new environment. The first months after the move were truly wonderful. I could come home more often, we spent more time together. Christy seemed happy, the children too. I thought, here it is, a new page in our life. More time together, a stronger family. But sometimes the best plans have the worst consequences. In the summer of 2020, when the whole world stopped because of the pandemic, maritime transport continued. We sailors were considered essential workers. Voyages became longer due to quarantine restrictions in ports. Instead of 3 months, I spent 5 to 6 months at sea. Christy complained that loneliness had become unbearable. Distance learning, children constantly at home, and me somewhere in the Pacific Ocean. She often cried during our video calls. I felt guilty and promised that as soon as everything settled down, I'd take a vacation. "Don't worry, honey," she said through tears. "We'll manage. The main thing is that you're safe." What irony. In September 2020, my ship unexpectedly returned to port due to engine failure. Instead of 3 weeks for repairs, only 1 week was needed. I decided to surprise my family. I didn't warn them about the early return. I arrived home on Wednesday evening. The living room light was on, but it was quiet. I went upstairs. The children were sleeping. I heard voices from our bedroom. I thought Christy was talking on the phone with her mother or sister. But when I got closer, the voice was male, unfamiliar, and the conversation wasn't a phone call at all. I stood by our bedroom door and listened as my wife, the mother of my children, the woman I'd lived with for 15 years, said to another man words she once said only to me. My heart was beating so loudly I was afraid they'd hear. But they were too absorbed in each other. I quietly went downstairs, sat in the kitchen, and waited. I waited and thought, what to do? Burst in? Scream? Beat him up? Throw her out? An hour later, I heard someone coming down the stairs, the door opening quietly, a car driving away. Christy came to the kitchen in her robe. She saw me and almost fainted. "Jordan. When did you, why didn't you warn me?" she stammered, turning white as a sheet. "Should I have?" I asked calmly. She understood that I knew. She collapsed into a chair across from me and cried. Not from repentance, from fear. Fear of losing everything she had. "It's not what you think," she began. "What do I think, Christy? This only happened once. I swear, Jordan, it was a mistake. I missed you so much, the children constantly ask about you, and I didn't know what to answer. He was there when things were hard for me." What? If only she knew how that sounds to a man who gave her 15 years of his life. We talked until morning. She told me she met him at the gym she started going to after we moved. He's divorced, no children, works as an engineer. Nothing serious, she swore. Just loneliness. I looked at her and thought, how easily a person can destroy everything that was built over years. One evening, one decision, one mistake. But the worst was yet to come. The following weeks were like a waking dream. The children sensed something was wrong but tried to act normally. Emma became even more attentive to me. Jake started hugging me more often. They were afraid their family would fall apart. And I was afraid of the same thing. During this period, I discovered details I wish I never knew. Going through our joint bank account statements, I found charges at restaurants I'd never been to, hotels during times when I was supposedly away and she claimed to be home with the kids. The evidence painted a picture of deception that went far deeper than one mistake. When I confronted her with the bank statements, Christy broke down completely. It started as friendship, she sobbed. He was going through a divorce, I was lonely. We'd meet for coffee after work just to talk. I never meant for it to become more. How long? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. 6 months, she admitted. But Jordan, I swear it meant nothing. You're the one I love, you're the one I married, you're the father of my children. 6 months. While I was out there working 16-hour days in storms and sweltering heat to provide for our family, she was building a relationship with another man. 6 months of lies, of I miss you phone calls while she was probably planning her next meeting with him. The man's name was David. I learned this from Emma, who innocently mentioned Mom's friend who sometimes picked us up from school when her car was in the shop. My daughter had been unwittingly part of the deception, used as a prop to make their meetings look innocent. I felt sick thinking about how Christy had involved our children in her lies, even if they didn't know it. Emma remembered David bringing her ice cream once, remembered him laughing at her jokes about school. Jake mentioned the nice man who knew a lot about soccer, who had attended one of his games when I was at sea. This wasn't a momentary lapse in judgment. This was a calculated affair that had woven itself into the fabric of our family life. Christy did everything to earn forgiveness. She stopped going to the gym, deleted all social media, gave me passwords to her phone and email. She called several times every day, told me where she was and what she was doing. She wrote me long letters explaining her feelings, her regrets, her commitment to our marriage. I'll do everything to get your trust back, she promised. But trust cannot be returned by the efforts of just one person. The nights were the worst. Lying in bed next to her, I'd stare at the ceiling and replay every detail of that evening when I caught them. I'd wonder how many other times they'd been in our bed in our home. I'd think about all the times I'd called from thousands of miles away, worried about her and the kids, while she was building a life that didn't include me. Sleep became elusive. When I did manage to doze off, I'd wake up in a cold sweat, having dreamed about walking in on them again. Sometimes the dreams were worse, scenarios where the children discovered them, or where I came home to find her gone with a note saying she'd chosen him. Christy noticed my insomnia and suggested we see a marriage counselor. Professional help, she called it. Someone who can guide us through this. Part of me wanted to refuse. What was the point of counseling when the fundamental foundation of our relationship had been destroyed? But for the sake of our children, I agreed to try. Dr. Patricia Reeves was a woman in her 60s with kind eyes and a no-nonsense approach. Our first session was awkward and painful. Christy did most of the talking, explaining her loneliness, her mistakes, her desire to rebuild our marriage. Jordan, Dr. Reeves asked, what do you need from Christy to begin healing? I thought for a long moment. I need to know that the woman I married still exists somewhere under all these lies. I need to believe that our 15 years together meant something to her. I need. My voice broke and I couldn't continue. Dr. Reeves nodded understandingly. Trust is like a mirror, she said. Once it's broken, you can put the pieces back together, but you'll always see the cracks. We attended counseling for 3 months. Some sessions felt productive. We talked about communication, about the challenges of my career, about how to reconnect as a couple. Other sessions felt like exercises in futility, rehashing the same arguments, the same hurt, the same broken promises. During one particularly difficult session, Dr. Reeves asked Christy a question that changed everything. If Jordan had come home a day later and never discovered the affair, would you have ended it with David on your own? Christy hesitated. That hesitation told me everything I needed to know. I don't know, she finally admitted. I was confused, conflicted. I loved Jordan, but David made me feel alive. I finished for her. Desired? Important? She nodded, tears streaming down her face. That's when I realized that this wasn't just about sex or loneliness. She had developed real feelings for this man. She might have loved me, but she had fallen in love with him. And if I hadn't come home early that night, who knows how long it would have continued or where it would have ended. I tried to forgive. I really tried. They say time heals, but sometimes it only masks the pain. Every time I went on a voyage, I imagined her with someone again. I analyzed every call for lies. Every delay from work seemed suspicious. This isn't life, it's slow death. The breaking point in counseling came during our final session. Dr. Reeves had been pushing us to discuss our future plans, our goals as a couple. Christy spoke enthusiastically about renewal, about second chances, about rebuilding stronger than before. When it was my turn to speak, I found myself saying words I hadn't planned. I feel like I'm married to a stranger who happens to look like my wife. The room fell silent. Christy's face crumbled, and Dr. Reeves leaned forward with concern. Every morning I wake up and for a split second I forget, I continued. Then reality crashes back and I remember that the woman sleeping next to me chose someone else. She may have chosen to stay with me after I found out, but that wasn't her first choice. Dr. Reeves asked if we wanted to continue counseling, but I shook my head. I can't keep paying someone to help me accept the unacceptable. The drive home from that last session was silent. Christy stared out the window while I focused on the road, both of us knowing that we'd reached the end of something that couldn't be repaired. At home, life continued its strange pantomime of normalcy. Emma had started her sophomore year and was excelling in her advanced placement classes. She'd always been mature for her age, but I noticed her taking on more responsibilities around the house, cooking dinner some nights, helping Jake with homework, mediating small conflicts between her parents. One evening, while Christy was at a school board meeting, Emma approached me in my study where I was reviewing shipping manifests. "Dad, can I ask you something?" "Always, sweetheart." She sat in the chair across from my desk, looking more like a young woman than the little girl who used to draw pictures of my ship. "Are you and Mom going to get divorced?" The directness of the question caught me off guard. I'd been so focused on protecting the children from our problems that I'd underestimated their perception. "Why do you ask? You sleep in the guest room now. You barely talk to each other. Mom cries when she thinks we can't see her. And you?" She paused, studying my face. "You look sad all the time, even when you're smiling." I closed my laptop and gave her my full attention. "Emma, your mother and I are going through some difficult times. We're trying to work things out, but sometimes adult problems are complicated. Is it because you're away so much? Because if it is, I could talk to Mom about not being so lonely. Maybe she could get a hobby or something." My heart broke a little more. My daughter was trying to solve problems she didn't fully understand, blaming circumstances rather than choices. "It's not about my work, honey. It's about trust and respect and keeping promises. Sometimes when those things are broken, they can't be fixed no matter how much we want them to be." Emma nodded solemnly. "Jake doesn't really understand what's happening, but I do. I've seen how you look at Mom now. It's different than before." "Different how?" "Like you're looking at a stranger instead of someone you love." Out of the mouths of babes. My 15-year-old daughter had articulated what I'd been struggling to express for months. That conversation with Emma was the catalyst I needed. I realized that by staying in a broken marriage for the children's sake, I wasn't protecting them. I was teaching them that betrayal was acceptable, that self-respect was negotiable, that love meant accepting treatment that diminished you. After a year of trying, I realized I couldn't live like this anymore. Not because I didn't love her, I did. Not because I didn't want to save the family, I did. But because I couldn't look at her without seeing that night, without wondering what other secrets she might be keeping, without feeling like a fool for trusting someone who had proven themselves untrustworthy. But how do you tell children that you're destroying their lives for your own peace of mind? The answer came to me through my own daughter's wisdom and my father's unexpected support. Some lessons are more important than maintaining the illusion of stability. The answer came to me by accident. Emma, who had turned 14, once said to me, "Dad, I know Mom did something bad. And I understand why you're sad. But you don't have to pretend for our sake. Jake and I aren't stupid. Wise children sometimes understand more than adults." But even knowing this, the decision wasn't easy. I spent months thinking, weighing pros and cons. Should I sacrifice my mental health for the children's stability? Should I pretend everything was fine while dying inside? Should I forgive the unforgivable for the sake of keeping the family together? The breaking point came during Christmas 2021. We were all decorating the tree together, the children were laughing, Christy was making hot chocolate. From the outside we looked like the perfect family. But I felt like an actor in a play I never auditioned for. Emma noticed my expression and quietly asked, "Dad, are you okay?" That's when I realized, my children deserved an honest father, not a broken one pretending to be whole. The conversation with Christy happened on a cold January evening in 2022. The children were at their friends' houses for a sleepover. We sat in the same kitchen where I'd confronted her about the affair. "I can't do this anymore," I said simply. She knew immediately what I meant. Her face went pale, but she didn't cry this time. Maybe she'd been expecting this moment. "I've tried, Jordan. I've done everything I could think of," she whispered. "I know. And I've tried too. But some things can't be fixed with effort alone." We talked for hours about logistics, custody arrangements, division of property, how to tell the children. It was the most civilized conversation we'd had in over a year, and perhaps the saddest. "Do you think you'll ever forgive me?" she asked as I was getting ready to leave. I thought about it for a long moment. Maybe. But forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. And I can't build a life on a foundation that's already cracked. Telling the children was the hardest thing I've ever done. Harder than any storm at sea, harder than any decision I'd made in my adult life. We sat them down together, Christy and I, and explained as gently as we could. Jake, now 12, asked the question that broke my heart. "Is it because of something we did?" "No, son," I said, pulling him close. "Sometimes adults make mistakes that can't be undone. Your mother and I both love you and Emma more than anything in the world. That will never change." Emma, wise beyond her years, simply nodded and asked about practical things. Where would they live, which school they'd attend, when they'd see me. The divorce proceedings began in March 2022. Christy didn't contest anything: custody, property division, support payments. She knew she had no moral ground to stand on. Her lawyer advised her to fight for more, but she refused. "I destroyed our marriage," she told him in my presence. "I won't destroy Jordan's financial future too." It was probably the most decent thing she'd done in 2 years. We settled on joint custody with a week-on, week-off arrangement. I bought a 2-bedroom apartment 15 minutes from our old house, close enough for the children to maintain their friendships and school, far enough that Christy and I wouldn't accidentally run into each other at the grocery store. The hardest part was explaining to other people. My family was supportive but confused. "She made one mistake," my mother said during a tense phone call. "Couldn't you work through it? Think about Emma and Jake." My friends at work were more understanding. Many of them had been through divorces themselves. Captain Rodriguez, who'd known me for 8 years, put it bluntly, "Jordan, I've seen what happens to men who stay in marriages where they can't trust their wives. They become bitter, angry, and it affects their work. A distracted sailor is a dangerous sailor." My shipmate Mike shared his own story over beers one evening when we were docked in Charleston. "My ex-wife cheated with my brother," he said. "I tried to forgive both of them, spent 2 years in marriage counseling, went to church every Sunday praying for the strength to let it go. You know what I learned? Forgiveness doesn't mean you have to keep letting someone hurt you." But the person whose reaction surprised me most was my father. He'd always been a traditional man, believed in working through problems no matter what. I expected him to lecture me about commitment and family values, about how his generation didn't give up when things got tough. Instead, he listened quietly as I told him everything: the affair, the lies, the months of trying to rebuild trust, the sleepless nights and constant anxiety. When I finished, he was quiet for a long time. "Your grandfather cheated on your grandmother," he finally said. "Did you know that?" I shook my head, stunned. My grandparents had seemed like the perfect couple. It was during the war. He was stationed in England, met a local girl. When he came home, he confessed everything to Grandma. She took him back. They stayed married for 53 years. "So you think I should?" "No," he interrupted. "Let me finish. They stayed married, but they were never happy again." "Not really. Your grandmother spent the rest of her life watching him, questioning every late night at work, every business trip. And your grandfather spent 50 years trying to make up for something that couldn't be undone. They loved each other, but they never trusted each other again." He put his hand on my shoulder. "Son, I've been married to your mother for 43 years. If she ever betrayed me like that, I don't know if I could forgive her either. You have to live with yourself first before you can live with anyone else. Don't become like your grandfather, a good man who spent his life paying for someone else's mistake." That conversation with my father gave me the permission I didn't know I needed to prioritize my own emotional well-being. Moving out was surreal. Packing 15 years of shared life into boxes, deciding what belonged to whom, what the children would want in both houses. Emma helped me pack my books, chatting about school and her friends as if we were just rearranging furniture, not dismantling a family. Jake was quieter, more clingy. He kept asking if I was moving far away, if he could still call me every day, if we could still go fishing together. Each question was a small knife to my heart. "Nothing changes between us, buddy," I assured him. I'm still your dad, I'm still here for you. Just in a different house. The first night in my new apartment was the loneliest I'd ever felt. Not even the months at sea compared to the silence of that empty space. I called both children to say goodnight, a tradition I maintained whether I was home or halfway around the world. Gradually we established new routines. Wednesday dinners became our thing. I'd pick up both kids after school and we'd go somewhere special. Sometimes it was just McDonald's, sometimes it was the science museum or a baseball game. These became some of my most cherished memories. Emma started high school and joined the debate team. Jake took up soccer and turned out to be surprisingly good at it. Both children seemed to adapt better than I expected, which was both a relief and somehow painful. Were they better off without the constant tension that had filled our house? Christy and I developed a polite but distant co-parenting relationship. We communicated through text messages about schedules and school events. We could sit together at Jake's soccer games without awkwardness, even cheer together when he scored. But we were like friendly strangers who happened to share children. Sometimes I caught her looking at me with something like regret or longing, but those moments passed quickly. We both knew there was no going back. My work became my sanctuary again. The sea, which had once been the source of our problems, the reason for my long absences that led to her loneliness, now became my refuge. The rhythm of the waves, the vastness of the ocean, the camaraderie of my shipmates all helped heal something in me that I thought might never heal. I started taking shorter contracts when possible, spending more time on shore. It meant less money, but I'd learned that financial security wasn't worth sacrificing everything else for. I wanted to be present for my children's lives in a way I hadn't been before. Emma graduated high school with honors and got a scholarship to study marine biology. I guess I got the ocean in my blood from you, Dad, she said with a smile. Jake is now 16, captain of his soccer team, and talking about maybe joining the Coast Guard after graduation. Both my children have grown into remarkable people. Kind, responsible, resilient. Sometimes I wonder if our divorce, painful as it was, taught them important lessons about standing up for yourself and not accepting unacceptable behavior. Christy still lives in the same house, still teaches at the same school. She never remarried, though I know she dated a few people over the years. We never talk about our personal lives during our brief interactions, but I sometimes wonder if she learned anything from what happened between us. As for me, I've dated a bit but nothing serious. I'm not sure I'm ready to fully trust someone with my heart again, and I don't think it would be fair to enter a serious relationship until I am. Maybe someday. For now, I'm content with my work, my children, and the peace I've found in my own company. People often ask if I regret the divorce, if I think I gave up too easily. The answer is complicated. I regret that it came to that. I regret that my children had to experience their parents' marriage falling apart. I regret that 15 years of love and shared history ended the way it did. But I don't regret choosing my own mental health and peace of mind. I don't regret showing my children that some betrayals have consequences, that trust once broken isn't automatically restored just because someone is sorry. Looking back now, 3 years later, I can see that Christy's affair was probably a symptom of problems in our marriage that we never addressed. My long absences, her loneliness, our failure to communicate about the real costs of my career choice on our family life. But understanding the reasons doesn't excuse the betrayal. There were other ways she could have handled her unhappiness. Counseling, honest conversations, even asking for separation if she was truly miserable. Instead, she chose deception. She chose to risk everything we'd built for a few moments of excitement with a stranger. And when I think about it that way, I know I made the right choice in leaving. The children know some of what happened. They're not stupid, and they were old enough to sense the tension and understand that their mother had done something that hurt me deeply. But I've never gone into details, never tried to turn them against her. She's still their mother, and despite everything, I believe she loves them. The conversation with Emma about the divorce came naturally. She'd been watching me carefully for weeks, and I could see the questions building in her eyes. "Dad, are you happier now?" she asked one day as we were setting up my new apartment together. "I'm more at peace," I answered honestly. "Happiness is different, it comes and goes. But peace, that's something I hadn't felt in a long time." "I think I understand," she said, arranging books on a shelf. "It's like when someone breaks your trust at school. Even if they apologize, you can't be real friends with them anymore because you're always wondering if they'll do it again." That's exactly right. Jake's understanding came differently. He was more concerned with practical matters. Would we still have Christmas together? Could he still call me whenever he wanted? Would I miss his soccer games? "None of that changes, buddy," I assured him. "I'm still your dad no matter where I live." One evening about 6 months after the divorce was finalized, Jake asked me something that made me realize how much he'd been thinking about everything. Dad, do you think Mom is a bad person? I considered my answer carefully. No, son. I think Mom is a person who made some bad choices. There's a difference. Good people can do bad things sometimes, and when they do, there are consequences. That doesn't make them evil, but it also doesn't mean the consequences go away just because they're sorry. Like when I broke Mrs. Henderson's window playing baseball? I was sorry, but I still had to pay for it with my allowance. Exactly like that, except some things cost more than allowance money. Both children adapted to the divorce better than I expected, which was both a relief and somehow painful. Were they better off without the constant tension that had filled our house? Had they been walking on eggshells around their parents' damaged relationship? Emma once told me that she was proud of me for choosing to be happy instead of just pretending to be okay. That comment came after she'd spent a weekend at my apartment and noticed that I was sleeping better, laughing more, engaging with them more fully. You seem like yourself again, Dad, she said. The real you, not the version that was trying so hard to be normal. Jake adapted by throwing himself into soccer and school activities. His grades improved, and his coach remarked that he seemed more focused and confident on the field. When I asked him about it, he said, "I don't worry about you and Mom fighting anymore. Now when I'm playing, I can just think about playing." Out of the mouths of babes. My children were teaching me that sometimes the most loving thing you can do for your family is to stop pretending everything is fine when it isn't. Now as I write this, I'm preparing for another voyage, 3 months in the South Pacific. But this time, I'm not leaving behind a family that's slowly falling apart from neglect and deception. I'm leaving behind children who are thriving and who know exactly when I'll be back. I'm leaving behind a life that, while not perfect, is honest and peaceful. The sea taught me many things over the years: patience, resilience, the importance of weather the storms. But the most important lesson it taught me was this: sometimes the bravest thing you can do is change course, even when everyone else thinks you should stay the path. I chose to change course. It wasn't easy, it wasn't painless, but it was right. And for the first time in years, when I look out at the horizon, I see possibility instead of just endless water. Thank you for watching the video to the end. Maybe YouTube will no longer offer you my channel, so subscribe to it by clicking subscribe on the right under the video to receive new interesting stories. Also on the right of the video there is a playlist with other interesting stories that you can listen to, and you can also write in the comments what stories you would like to see on the channel.